Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day, there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I can't tell you how excited I am for today's guest. My guest is someone who I knew several years ago back in Denver, and, absolutely delightful, wonderful woman who reached back out to me through LinkedIn, I believe, just, not long ago, and reconnected, which is what we should be doing on those tools, right? And so it is so much fun to have my guest on today, because we're going to have so much fun talking about the subject. So please join me in welcoming Christine Daspro to our program. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm so excited to be here.
I know, and it was so fun to reconnect with you. And, that really is one of the things that I encourage people to do is go through your Rolodex. Do people even have those? Our LinkedIn accounts, even maybe our Facebook accounts, and reconnect with people that we've just lost touch, and we've got plenty of time now. We're not going to networking events. We're not doing all of those things. So it's a great tool to be doing that.
I totally agree. And it also helps people to come out of their zone.
Right.
Bad or indifferent.
Yep.
It just, it puts that smile back on their face.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Who's thinking about me?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, and of course, when we chatted before, we had fun catching up on everything that's been going on in Denver and all of that good stuff. But today we're here to talk about something else. So let me tell people just a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into this. So Christine Daspro brings over 30 years of experience in the corporate, nonprofit sectors, and is currently the CEO of Threads of Leadership. Threads of Leadership focuses on developing individual leaders through lifelong learning, creating valuable connections, and curating impact through how they lead. Before starting Threads of Leadership, Christine worked for 10 years at the Leadership Investment as Vice President of Programming and Fundraising, and 30 years at Merrill Lynch as Vice President in various roles. So obviously you started when you were 12. But again, Christine, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Well, you have had kind of a varied career. And so I always like learning about how someone got to where they are today and how you discovered that this truly is your passion in life. So give us the background.
Well, I wish I did start at 12. I'm younger today. But I spent 30 years with Merrill Lynch. Mm-hmm. To be really honest with you and your audience, I did it right out of high school. Mm-hmm. My dream probably was to get married and have a family and raise children, and that was kind of...
That was what was expected.
Absolutely, in the 70s. Mm-hmm. I had an opportunity to go to Merrill Lynch. I had a friend that was there. Mm-hmm. And I started literally as an administrative assistant, which is such an important role.
Right.
And just worked through. I'm a self-learner. If you saw my library in my home, I'm some geek that all she reads is leadership books, but I do read fun books. But that's how I learn from other leaders. So when I was at Merrill Lynch for 30 years, I graduated from private client over to the institutional world. And in that world, you live, as a female back in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, you were there in a survival mode.
Right.
You had...
Oh, yeah. That was not a world for women to be in.
No, it was a man's culture. And so you played the game. You did what you had to do to survive, be seen as a leader. But for me during that time, I never realized that I was becoming two different people. The person I was when I put my business suit on, and of course it was the bow tie and the padded.
Right. Oh yeah. We even dressed like men. We wore suits.
And I did that. I played that role from the time I left my house to the time I got back into my home, which could be 12-hour day, 10-hour day. And then it was like when I started to come down from that stress, I would crash and realize that what is going on here, you know? But it took me a long time to realize that I was living in this, which now they call it imposter syndrome, but it was just the world you lived in.
Right.
You survived. And so when I finally decided to leave Merrill Lynch in 2006 and come out here to Colorado, and I did it for family. I had a niece that was born. And when I met her, I just fell in love with her. And I said, oh, that's a world I want to be part of. 17 and taking SATs and looking right? But when I came out here, I thought I'd stay in the world of finance, and then realized that my corporate job didn't translate into a regional job here in Colorado. So I decided to leave the industry, and it was the right time because in 2008, that's when Merrill Lynch was sold. So I left at the right time. And when I came here, like I said, I thought I would stay in this industry, financial industry.
Right. After all, you'd been in it all your career.
And I thought that's all I knew. That's all I knew was that industry, which was the truth. And I went to a networking event because I had to open my world here. I only had 5 family members, and one was under the age of 2. Who had
That's not a lot of good networking.
Yeah, not really. So I found Women's Vision Foundation, which is now, before it closed, was called the Leadership Investment. But I went to a networking event and so welcomed.
Right. It was a fabulous organization. It was one of the ones that I loved being a member of.
Yeah, and that's how we met. At Women's Vision. And I started to go to their events, and there was a job opportunity on their website for a part-time salesperson. And at that time, sales was truly dialing for dollars.
Right. When we talk about cold calling, it was cold calling.
Absolutely. And I applied for it. And I need the experience in interview. And I went. Honestly, Deb, it was the most, I want to say, the craziest interview I ever went on. It was at a Starbucks. And at that point, I really thought there was no one in Colorado had an office, because every time I met someone, it was at a Starbucks.
I know. We did. We just always went to Starbucks.
And it was the 3 women that I would be working with. It was like, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. That's how they went. We all had their little cheat sheets, and who was serious and who was kind. And I walked away and said, there's no way I'm getting this job. Right. And I got a call about 2 weeks later from the president. And the president said to me, I know you're not a traditional salesperson. Teach you our programs and client base. But what sold you was your passion for the organization. And what it was doing for you. And I got hired. In January of 2007 and stayed until they closed in 2016. And graduated from primarily an administrative role to being the second in the organization.
Wow.
We had a number of CEOs. I desired to be the CEO.
Right.
I knew I had a greater impact in programming and coaching and mentoring. Connecting with people,
right?
All of that. So when it closed in 2016, I was at a point in my life that I'm like, I'm not going back to a corporate structure.
No.
I have to. But I found my calling, Women's Vision Foundation. Found that my purpose and passion was to help individuals. And when I worked for the foundation, it was all women. And I would be lying to say that I don't gravitate to helping, but I love helping anyone who reaches out.
Right.
And I realized that the work I did was impactful. It's what got me up every morning. Really gave me the energy. So in 2017 is when I decided to talk to my corporate partners that I worked with and ask them, now that the organization is closed, what are you missing? Your company, what are you missing?
Right.
And they told me it was the speakers.
Right. Yeah, because Women's Vision Foundation always had fabulous speakers.
And you were one of them.
Thank you.
That spoke to our corporate audience. So I reached out to about 10 different speakers just to see if they would consider it.
Right.
Because when you're with the nonprofit, they volunteered their time. So I'm going to say, I'm willing to pay you something.
Right.
Would you consider this? And everyone, that the initial 10 I spoke with said to me, I'd do anything to help you launch this. In fact, I don't have to get on a plane.
Right.
Colorado, I am all for it. And it started out in 2017, probably with 15 speakers, a couple of authors, to offer this back to the companies that I have relationships with.
Right.
And now this part of the company called Curating Connections is probably 55 speakers.
Right.
Speak globally, nationally on all topics that all filter into leading and including themselves, as well as there's authors that we do book club type, where we read the book, we get the author to talk about it and all of that. So I still do that work with corporations. Of course, last year that kind of died down.
Right. Or became virtual.
Yeah. And virtual, as much as I thought it would have been a highlight for these, the employees were so burnt out of being on calls.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Like another Zoom.
So the company is still in existence and I love it.
And we'll get back to having people speak in person.
Oh, no. And I've gotten the inquiries. So it's wonderful to do the research to help companies. But what I realized was I was still staying in the background. People didn't know what I brought to the table. They knew the connections that I could make.
Right.
From the speakers to the companies and all of that. In 2000, let me see, we're in 2019. I had this aha moment and said, I need to get myself out.
Right.
Share with what I offer. And in 2020, perfect timing.
I know. Yeah. What a time to launch a business.
I know. I launched the Threads of Leadership. The whole concept of the title came from me writing. I belong to this organization called Rise Collaborative Workspace. What they did every year was create an anthology book that their members participated in. And I decided to write a chapter of my story. And that's when I started to peel back and go back in time and realize that every job I had was connecting individuals. I was more a relationship person and I was a very good listener. And when I started to realize all of that, I realized this thread came through my whole entire life, from corporate to nonprofit to what I'm doing now. And that's where the threads came from.
I love it. I love it. Because that is, it is such a cool concept.
Yeah. And so, and it's not a straight line. It
meanders, it wanders.
Got colors. It's got all that. So that's where the title Threads of Leadership came from. And,
I love it.
So I love the fact that now I can bring, and what I bring to the table for my coaching clients, for workshops that I plan to do in the future, is the experience. I've experienced all of this. So you're not telling me something I haven't done, heard, haven't been through. My whole goal is to help individuals. You're never gonna miss the pitfalls. There's going to be pitfalls. There's going to be all of this challenging things in your career and in your personal life. But I hope to give people the tools that can help them not get that really deep dip.
Right.
It's more surface.
I love it. You mentioned imposter syndrome, and I think that is so important. it still exists. I mean, I've heard people that have poo-pooed it. Nah. I can be me now. And that's great if they are. I mean, that's fabulous. But I think we do still see that, in many cases, especially at a higher level of leadership, we play we play a role. It's not us. And of course the us is the important part, whether it's the empathy, whether it's, all sorts of things. So talk to us more about imposter syndrome.
Oh, it's like, it makes my heart pound. I get so excited. I mean, you think of the word imposter syndrome and it really sounds very negative. And some people will take it to be very
right.
And I don't see it to be negative.
No.
I just see it to be a filter that you don't realize that you're going through.
Right. And it can be very positive, actually.
Yeah. Because I think you learn a lot about yourself. I'm just going to read a quote here for a second, and it's from Business Review. And it says, defines imposter syndrome as a collection of feelings of inaccuracy that persist despite evident success. And it is, it's a mouthful, truthfully, but it really is. I work with this amazing young lady right now, one of my coachees, and she's in her early 30s, has taken on an amazing role in a Fortune 500 company. And she said yes before thinking about it. Take this. I'm going to do this, and now what we're working through is her second guessing her capabilities. She took it because she was afraid she wouldn't be offered this opportunity again, but didn't think about it in the sense of the learning curve. You have a learning curve in every journey that you take in your professional career. It is a journey. It's not a done. You will have this moment of, what did I do?
Right. What the heck did I get myself into?
Yes. And that's where the imposter syndrome comes in, because faking it to make it. And I hate that terminology, but that's what we did, or at least I did my entire career, was you faked it till you made it. And that's where you live through that uncertainty. So as much as you are very successful, person tapped you on the shoulder to take on this challenge and on this project. You're not believing it. And when you're not believing it, you're coming across with self-doubt and lack of confidence. And people can read right through that. Because either you overemphasize it or you underemphasize it. And the part of imposter syndrome that I think people don't realize that is really important to help you overcome it. I don't even think you have it.
Right.
Until you sit down and tell yourself, why am I feeling this place of insecurity or lack of confidence or knowledge or skill, however you want to say it. It's a hard admittance. And imposter syndrome is not failure.
Right.
Imposter syndrome is just, like I said earlier, it's this filter that you don't even know that you're pushing through.
Right.
And it's in all walks of life. I have the pleasure of working with the slightly, probably late 20s, mid 30 individuals, because now they're getting those opportunities. But they're people that are perfectionists. And that is a hard space to be in.
Oh, yeah. Because we can't be perfect. I mean, no matter what we do, we cannot be perfect.
So, some of my conversations are not, they may walk away saying, wow, she's pretty direct. But
sometimes you have to be.
You do. And the other part of it too is when you're in that, when you are a perfectionist, the high expectations of yourself, you have of other people.
Right.
And when you have that very high expectation of people, there's no doubt about it that there's going to be disappointment.
Right. Yeah.
Because people are not going to live up to that expectation. They don't have the same, I'm searching for a word, but the same reasoning of why they're doing what they're doing. And it's just a job. They're never going to meet your expectations at the level that you want them to.
Right. And it's so interesting to talk about this because, a good portion of this comes when we're little, I'm at the tail end of being a baby boomer. But obviously for baby boomers, I mean, we really were told there are, you go to, you might go to college, maybe not, but you might go to college, but you became a teacher, you became a nurse. But I mean, I remember, and I graduated in 1980. So, but being, with people saying, well, you're going to college to get your MRS degree. And then when I didn't get my, you were going just to meet somebody to get married, and so you were going to meet the frat boys or whatever. And, and that didn't happen. I was like, but excuse me, we were talking before, allergies here in Georgia is always a great time. But, we were raised being told you're a teacher, you're a nurse, you're a mother. That is what is expected of you. And more importantly, you can't do those other things. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. How many times did we not even get into the advanced math classes? Things like that. I'm going to hack up a frog here pretty soon. And Gen Xers, in many ways, we're told the same thing. Millennials, I love because many of them were told, you go do whatever you want. And so, but how do we deal with those little voices from when we were kids or maybe, in school telling us, you can't do that. You're not good enough because you're a girl.
Oh, that's hitting the nail right on the head. I do an exercise that is so simple with individuals. And I want to say that I can probably thank my dad for this, but he always used to tell me to take a legal pad and draw a line down the middle, the pros and the cons. And what I tell my coachees is to do the same thing. Put the things that you love to do and the things that you don't necessarily love, or that you feel that you're not necessarily good in. Because I think in order to release the chatter in your head, you've got to celebrate the important things or the skills that you thrive, and So instead of looking at the things you don't do well, celebrate the things that you do well.
Right.
Because then all these other things kind of fall a little low on the totem pole of, doesn't mean you don't need to do them. Doesn't mean you need to advance in them, but don't dwell on them because that's the negative chatter. And that's where you get that self-doubt because you're not perfect in everything. And I'm sure you've heard this, and I'm probably sure every one of your readers have heard this. When a woman goes and looks at a job application and there's 10 things on the job.
Right. I was just thinking of this.
She has only 8. Oh, I applied for this.
Right. Yeah. She just won't even apply.
And a man on the other side will say, oh, I have 2. I'll work through the other.
Right. I can learn how to do the other 8. I can delegate how to do them. I mean, yeah, they just, and you're right. The woman goes, no, can't do it. And she probably can do those other 2 things, but just not as well.
Exactly.
And so we are obviously our own harshest critics, whether it's that we're expecting perfection but we are, I mean, we're just, I'm not quite as good at that. So I can't do it. I mean, there's no gray area for many cases.
Yeah. And to really be honest with you, I went through this through a good majority of my career. I felt that I was being dishonest, unfaithful to people that were in my world. Because I never admitted I didn't go to college. I was embarrassed by it. So I lived in this imposter world, but I had the knowledge because I taught myself.
Right.
And that's what people gravitate to. They didn't gravitate to the diploma on my wall. They gravitated to me as a person and my authenticity as a leader. And that's where the connection came to. The people in my world, they gravitated. And it took me, I'm going to probably say until I started my own business, that I finally looked in the mirror and said, you're good.
Right.
Don't let anybody tell
Mm-hmm.
you differently.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody wants to brag about the initials after their name,
Mm-hmm.
then more power to you.
Right.
I had those initials.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me time. And I think that's what happens with individuals. I'm not talking of, and education is a big part of that, because depending on the world that you're in, I'm not saying if you're a doctor, you go in without any.
Right. Oh yeah. But yeah, the school of hard knocks is just as important.
Just as important. And that's the world that I came from. Very proud of it in my life. But I think that as you talk about that negative chatter, I think individuals have to start to own who they are, they bring to the table. Not going to bring everything that everybody wants, or every job is asking for.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you're not good at it. I have a mentee. She's amazing, a mom of 3. And she's in that place in her life, and also her husband, where, I want more. This job is not giving me everything that I want. Or I've got a boss that micromanages me, and I don't like being micro. And we all gone through it. I mean,
right. Oh yeah.
Being an entrepreneur as well as yourself, there's not every aspect of our job that we do every day. And I say to her, and that's where I have guided her to the pad. I said to her, put the things down that you love to do and you're good at, right? The skills that you bring to them. And when you go to look for that next job, internally or externally, keep those in mind. That job is going, if there's 10 things in the job, and the last 2 things you really love doing listed, I will probably guarantee you that that's the smallest part of what you're going to be doing every day. So if the top thing says you need to be a data analyst and massage Excel spreadsheets, and you're doing that, then be smart and don't even put yourself through the torture.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are times, where it's like, okay. Or, I mean, if I can learn that. I am smart and I can figure it out. Okay. Now, obviously during the interview, don't lie. If you can't do it, say, you know what, that's not a skill that I have right now, but I know I can pick it up. And they should appreciate the initiative that you're going to take.
But that's where you have to be, because ultimately the truth is going to come out. After you get hired, the truth will come out.
Right.
Budget so long.
And we see that with men all the time, right? Because they did, out of the 10 things, they really could only do 2, and they were going to fake it with the other 8. We figured that out pretty fast. And then you have to determine, okay, what do we need to do to fix this? And there's, obviously a variety of things that you can do.
And I think another part to your initial question on the chatter, it is the circle that you're part of.
Right.
If you position yourself in a very competitive circle, professionally or personally, you're constantly competing in that. That's where the self-doubt comes from in the chatter. Right. That's where the imposter syndrome comes from. You're not being honest with your circle of people. And so you're trying to live up to what they think your expectation, or their expectations are. So I think you also, you have to be honest across the board. And that's where the vulnerability comes from. And that's where, when I think about the threads of leadership, your story, your life, personal, professional story, nobody else has it.
Right.
No one creates a tapestry. There's no 2 tapestries that are the same. So every thread in your life creates a tapestry of who you are as a leader.
Right.
And that's how your authenticity comes out. And that's how you're able to be that. And I say vulnerable because your team needs to know that you do make mistakes.
Right.
You're not
because
perfect.
then they know they can make mistakes and not be crucified for it.
Absolutely. And I know it sounds easy for me sitting here talking about this, not in that race of, certain tasks that have to be done and time frames and all of that kind of stuff. I totally understand it and know that it's not an easy place to be. But you're always going to stay in that place of uncertainty and confidence and self-doubt until you can do some of that inner work.
Right.
In with that regard.
And the other thing that I see women doing so much is downplaying what they have done. It drives me nuts when somebody says, I'm just a mom. Oh my gosh, that's one of the most important things that can be done.
Hardest job.
Yeah. And so, it's, and what people forget is that when they're being just a mom, everything else that they're doing with that, they're budgeting, they're, all the things that just happen in the house. I mean, and now, many people are also teaching their children, but, all the things that they do in addition, maybe they were the head of PTA, maybe they volunteered at their church. I mean, all of these other things. And I think that's the thing that happens, especially with women who are going back into the workplace, is they forget that those kind of soft skills are just as important. It's like we were saying, that school of hard knocks, doing all of those things is just as important as the person who has been sitting behind that corporate desk for 20 years. Raising that family and being successful with that is phenomenal.
I mean, and you don't realize that the skills that you just talked about, the whole concept of multitasking, right? You talk to certain people, multitasking, they tell you that, it's not a good thing to do, but you're so valuable to an organization or to peers or your team when you can see more than one piece of the puzzle. If you're in that tunnel and I've got these 10 things on my list and I've got to check them off today, and otherwise I've fallen back or I haven't achieved everything I need to achieve today. That's a hard place to live in as well. I'm not check off the list kind of person. I get everything done, but I also know that at some point when I've had enough, I've had enough.
Right.
Your body has to refuel. Your mind has to take a vacation every once in a while.
Right.
And again, I go back to the people that you surround yourself with. It's so important to have that support system in all aspects.
Right.
And it's so important to be able to communicate what you're feeling and let it go. I mean, and that sounds so, just let it go. I mean,
that's a song title somewhere.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking about
let it go.
But sometimes you need to, because sometimes there's not an answer and not a solution to currently what you're experiencing. So you just have to take that deep breath. But like you said, it's a work in progress. You and I are at a point in our lives that we do let it go.
Yeah. I'm like,
whatever. Depending on your life experiences, you learn to let it go.
Right. Well, and sometimes just simple things. I mean, 10 years ago, if, we would think of, somebody who say went into a meeting and didn't say hi to you, maybe you said, hi, Christine, or, hi, Deb. And they didn't respond, and then it would have been crushing, oh my God, and now it's like, whatever, because we realize, we could have been snubbed. And even if we're snubbed, it's kind of, well, whatever. But we also think, okay, maybe they didn't hear us. Maybe they were thinking of something else. I mean, we have those conversations to go back and say, it's okay. That whoever it was didn't say hi, didn't respond to that email. It's not that they're snubbing us. And again, if they are, okay, whatever. Maybe it's somebody that you think, hey, maybe I don't need to be, have them in my circle anymore.
Correct. And yes. And we have to try to put ourselves in someone else's shoes.
Right.
What's going on with that person? If it's done more than once,
right.
maybe it's just that disconnect. You're never going to be friends. You're going to be colleagues.
And that's okay.
You're just going to be around the same table at the same time. That's okay. But as you get older and you get more defined on who you are as a person, your emotional intelligence skills kick in, you know, and you observe, you get that point of empathy where you can see that something is not right.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But that takes time. That just doesn't happen overnight.
No.
And when you come to that place, it's less tension on yourself. And you start to accept people as who they are. You know what I mean? I worked with a woman one time that I used to say to myself, what did I do to her? What did I do to this person? She would treat me like I was invisible. And it got to a point where I was ready to have that difficult conversation.
Yeah. What the heck did I do to you, lady?
Then I had to have a conversation with myself and say, how important is this woman in my circle?
Right.
So if she's not that important in my circle and she has no influence in my circle, then I just need to understand that we just need to part.
Right. And our circles have layers. You know, somebody can be moved in and out of those various responsibilities.
But it takes time. Not, you know, as you get older, not everybody's going to like you.
No.
Everybody else.
Well, you know, and the pandemic has, you know, at least for the people that I've talked with, really made them rethink a lot of these things. Now, I kind of went through that when I got so sick. It was like, you know, who do I need in my life and who do I not need in my life? You know, you get rid of the toxic people, the people who, the gloom and doomy folks, you know, all of those various things. And, you know, and then you bring in the people that are truly going to support you. But I think so many people really did do that during the pandemic too, because we weren't able, and in many cases, we still aren't able to go to our regular networking meetings, to go to our regular events. And so those people who we had in our circles, you know, what, 14 months ago, 15, whenever, 50, yeah, January of 2020, you know, we may have discovered, you know, it really wasn't that important. You know, one of the things here, you know, I have not gone to a networking event, a true networking event in well over a year. Don't miss it in the slightest. Part of that is I don't miss having to get dressed up, having to drive, having to put on shoes, you know, all of these various things. But, you know, I miss the people that were there just because, you know, some of them are the nicest, sweetest people. Other people, I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. I miss some of the programming, you know, you know, when you belong to great organizations that have great programs, that's good. But now there's lots of online replacements for that. You know, and just missing the people is not enough reason for me to be going back to those networking events. And so when I thought about it, I thought, you know, what did I get out of those events besides just seeing the people? Well, if it wasn't good business connections, things like that, then, okay, maybe it's not important for me to be there. You know, and I think you know, we were talking circles. I think so many people have really expanded their circles, especially out of their immediate proximity. You know, we're now networking with people literally around the world and having a great time at it.
Yeah. And interestingly so, I always say to myself, I'm not a big social media person, but I'm learning to be, and that's what the pandemic has done. But the positive part is that people I would have never even connected with, or even have known about, have become part of my circle.
Right. So
learning about organizations, individuals, and the work they're doing, and the things that they, you know, from Facebook to LinkedIn, I mean, every platform. You start to learn what other people are doing. You know what I mean? So it's not a phone call. It's not necessarily a text. It's not as personal.
Right.
But when you comment on something, you're building a relationship. so that circle does get bigger.
Right.
And believe it or not, I've learned more about myself as that circle has gotten bigger. Where I would have at some point said, and again, we go back to title and education and all of that. Sometimes when you go to a face-to-face networking event, you will never walk up to a CEO.
Oh yeah, because it's just so intimidating.
It is really a lot of fun when you start having a conversation on LinkedIn,
right?
Or you get an invite from the CEO. Maybe he's not the one sending it, but his network, who's ever doing it on his or her behalf, finds your work interesting,
right?
Either as an entrepreneur or as an employee. Right now, as much as things start to open, there are so many job opportunities, and there's such a different way of finding individuals now,
right?
Than the typical, send my resume type of thing, just something online. So I think we've had to think out of the box a little bit, and we've had to come out of our comfort zone. But what I have found through some of this, and as a sole entrepreneur, believe me, I get my mornings that I wake up and I'm like, am I kidding myself or am I kidding
around? You pull the blanket back over it.
It's just going to be one of those days, or I walk away from a coaching session and I say to myself, I wish I could have done more for that person. Or I wish I, and you think about those conversations because you're being very impactful. Because that person's not coming to you because they have all the answers. They are really searching. But then I realized that if I had all the answers, I would never learn.
Right. And as we've said, learning is just so absolutely critical. I mean, people ask me, why do I do this program? Oh my gosh, I talk to the coolest people in the world. And every single time I learn something new, and it's just so much fun.
Yeah. And I feel the same exact way. So, I'm very proud of Threads of Leadership, really proud of the work that I'm doing. And not for, yes, I learn a lot from all these individuals, but I am in awe sometimes when I look at these men and women saying, oh my God, you're just an amazing person.
Right.
But the whole point is that they have to believe it. Tell them all the time, but they have to believe it. And sometimes that's the biggest challenge for an individual to move or push forward.
Right.
Because again, every time you push forward, think when you were a kid and you went from grammar school to your first day of high school. You went from high school to your first day of college and moved away to go to college.
Right.
You know what I mean? Those were just impactful moments of fear. I mean, fear.
And sometimes we raced into it, but there was still, your heart was going, because what if they don't like me?
Yeah. And I mean, it's just human. We're just humans, and we need that connection. And we need, I think it's just an important part of all of our DNAs, like to be accepted. I mean, for what you bring to the table.
Right.
Because we all have different needs. And that's the part that I really emphasize with everybody that I work with, is that don't forget your story. Don't push down the things that you didn't do well.
Right.
Push down, I went from an assistant vice president to a vice president, or a vice president to a director in such a short period of time. Oh, it's no big deal. It is a big deal.
Right.
And why you can't expect other people to value you if you don't value yourself. And when you push all of that down and say, oh, it was part of the job, or it's
I only got the job because
that's where all of the uncertainty comes. Don't. I have an older sister, and she is notorious at saying, be in the moment. In the moment. And sometimes I kind of cross my eyes and say, okay, in the moment. But that's the only way that you get to celebrate. You should be dancing, even if you're by yourself. You know, I can remember when Threads of Leadership and I got my first coaching client, I was doing the jig. I mean, but I was so excited to be able to reach out to help somebody else. So when we celebrate is when I think able to accept who we are. And when we are vulnerable enough to share our stories, people, I think what happens is sometimes there's a difference between managing individuals and leading individuals.
Right. Oh, most definitely.
Very big different skill sets. And, you know, people that manage, their skill set is extremely organized. They're very tactical. They're very, you know, check the box, A to, you know, start at point A to end at point B. It's project driven. It's different things like that. Leading is being influential. And you can't influence others if you don't believe in yourself. Right. That's how people gravitate to you. Right. And they see there's that authenticity that comes out.
Right. Yeah. And I also believe strongly that it is important to celebrate other people's successes. You know, and, you know, they do a thing with C-Suite Network where every Friday afternoon they have a celebration Friday, and they just started this because of the pandemic. And, you know, and so people participate, and, you know, maybe it's that they, you know, they finished their week and their computer didn't blow up, or, you know, or they got $1 million client. I mean, you know, there's anything and everything in there, but, you know, it is something. And I think that's been maybe one of the hardest things with the pandemic is we've become very isolated. You know, I am Miss Social Butterfly, but the thought of actually going out and doing stuff was like, ugh. You know, whether it's for fun or whether it's professional. I mean, it's gotten very easy to not do it. Like I said, you know, I'd have to put on real shoes. But I think that's one of the things that, and, you know, obviously mental health experts have been very concerned about this, is that we have become so isolated. We're not celebrating our own and others' successes. So it's about finding those people, and maybe it's just 5 people, maybe it's more, but, you know, finding those people who are that great support system where you can celebrate those things.
Yeah, it is so important. And, you know, those Zoom calls with your friends, you know, my family is scattered all over the U.S. and my cousins on my dad's side, every quarter, we do a Zoom call, you know, and we get to, you know, and we're not together because of a funeral or a wedding.
Right. You
know, just sharing, and you get to learn about each other probably more than you would have, you know, when it was, you know, when you're racing along. But people, as you said, you need to sell. If you get excited when your children do something,
right?
You know what I mean? And they need to be able to celebrate for you as well, and vice versa. And because of the pandemic, we've had to put our best foot forward to stay connected.
Right.
You know.
It is an effort, like we were saying.
But especially in the corporate world. If you're in an office, you know what I mean? It's so much easier to just walk across the hall to somebody's office and celebrate them or yourself. Right. Now you think about it, I have to set up a Zoom call. Or to me, celebrating via a text is not celebrating.
No, you know, that's not. We need to see somebody's face, even if it is just on a screen.
Absolutely. You know, so I think we've all had to adjust. And I think some of the loneliness of when you're a people person and you need the energy of your peers around you. And now you're sitting in your home office and all
you're
day
talking
long,
to that cat.
right? Or you're talking via a computer.
Right.
You know, sometimes that really zaps the energy. It doesn't.
Oh yeah. Zoom fatigue is definitely a real thing.
It's a real thing. So I think people have had to adjust, and they just have had to think about things differently and about themselves differently.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, remember your first Zoom call. I mean, your eyes are probably all over the page. You get the whole screen. You know, now the lighting, before the lighting was off, and now we know what the lighting is, and these things. But it's been an amazing growth
right
time.
Yeah.
And I think,
well, and especially for leaders who are not with their people anymore.
Yes.
And same with managers. I mean, poor micromanagers, I think they just, their little brains blew up like back in May. But it's bringing different skills to light. I mean, when you're only managing people remotely like this, it really is totally different skill sets. And I was talking with a guest the other day about some of the things that we have to pay attention to. Did you have that employee that was always impeccably groomed? And even on Zoom, they were professionally dressed, all these things. And now that's really gone downhill. Okay, there might be a different issue there that you need to talk to them about. Maybe they are depressed. Maybe they've just gotten too casual and it needs to be brought back up a little bit. But yeah, being a leader remotely is very difficult because, of course, good leaders pick up so much with body language and all of those things that we're not getting on the computer screen.
Yeah, and I think too is you start to have a greater trust in your team. And
Oh yeah,
you have to believe that they are putting the best. There's a lot of trust in there.
Right. And if you don't trust them, then there's a much bigger issue. I mean, you probably didn't trust them in the office. So, then you need to think about, and then I remember people saying, well, how do I know that they're going to get the work done? Well, did you worry about them getting the work done when you were 10 feet away from them? And if you did, then there's a big issue.
There's a bigger issue there. So people want to be trusted. It's like when you're raising your children, the more independence you give them, the more they're going to take on. And they have to be able to, and I think the biggest thing about this whole pandemic is the skill of communication. You can't just assume.
Right.
The assumption is where you're getting yourself in trouble. And I think that's part of the chatter in your head too. You're assuming things. Haven't heard from my boss this week. Oh, he must be upset with me, or she must be upset with me. Or, so you're getting that chatter in your head because you're not getting that connection.
Right. And why is it the chatter's always negative? It's never they're saying woohoo. It's always eh.
No, it just sits and it just weighs. And it's a work in progress. That's what we keep telling ourselves. We're evolving every day.
Right.
Evolving. And when we allow ourselves to do that and be able to say, I don't know what's on the other side of that door, but have the confidence to open it.
Yeah. I mean, and let's face it, it really could be scary, but we can do it. We can handle it.
Think about it. I mean, I remember for 30, probably 40 years of my career, I had a paycheck. Thank God. You know what I mean? I knew what I was going to get every 2 weeks. Well, when I went independent, was like, okay.
Yeah.
Got that automatic check coming in the house to pay the mortgage and to pay all this. You learn you adjust to, you set boundaries here. You said, you just have to start realizing, what you have to do or you have to shift. And some shift is uncomfortable for people.
Oh yeah, we don't like change, and it's interesting. I mean, there are some people who adapt fairly well to it, and then others that are like, oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, it is easier to just continue the way we've always done it. I mean, I love it when I work with companies and I say, well, why are you doing something this way? Well, that's the way we've always done it. Have you considered maybe doing it a different way? And people are like, and so that's, but, and I think you talked about perfection. I think the other thing we have to get over is different does not mean wrong either. Doing something a different way, it might be better. might be the same, might not be work out as good, but then you learn from that. But yeah, different is not automatically bad. And that's one of the shifts. And, you know, that's one of the tricky things, like in delegating, you know, well, they're not going to do it as good as I do, so I might as well just do it myself. Well, you know, yeah, they're going to do it differently, but holy schmoly, it might actually be better. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's different is okay.
Yeah. And why would you put your best foot forward if you know that something's going to, you know, change it or whatever?
Right.
I mean, I'm a baby boomer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I still read the newspaper. I want to feel that newspaper every morning. You know, read a hardcover book, you know, not Kindle but that's me. That's what makes up my, you know,
right. But you also know how to do those other things.
Oh yeah. Or you send a text, you know what I mean? For the longest time, it was really challenging for me to just, everything was communicated by either a text or an email. And, but, you know, then I got to a point where I'd say to some people, you can't hide behind this. That conversation still has to take place. You know what I mean? You can't ask for, you know, your boss or your family or whatever the circumstances might be. As we talked earlier, your body language expresses how you're feeling. You know what I mean? And it's so much easier to put it, you know, and then people, and depending on the communication that you're having, you never know what the underlying, you know, takeaway is.
Right.
You know, and that's where the negative chatter happens. If you're having a conversation with your boss or team leader, and, you know, they say something in a way, and now all of a sudden your weekend is ruined because you really don't know what they meant.
And that wasn't what they meant.
Absolutely. So I think that, you know, there's ways of easing the, you know, the path of positiveness in as you move forward. But I think what you also have to do is you as personally, you have to know what your triggers are.
Right.
You have to understand what gets you ticked off or what gets you happy.
Yeah. Is it if somebody doesn't respond within 20 minutes or, you know,
your triggers. And again, it's back to communication. And I think every time any of us have had a new boss, the most conversation you have with us is how do you want me to communicate?
Right. And same with clients. I mean, you know, I have some clients that will absolutely only text me. And so then when they call, I'm like, oh my God, the world must be coming to an end. You know, or emails. And then, but part of it is, you know, and is setting those expectations, you know, letting people know, okay, if I send you an email, I would like you to reply within 24 hours, or, you know, even just to acknowledge that you got it. I mean, you know, or, you know, so because nobody's a mind reader, you know, we all like to think we are, but no, you know, and so setting those expectations by saying, you know, I'm sending you this and I expect this is part of what being that good leader is. Because they're not going to know if you don't tell them.
Absolutely. I had a boss one time at the foundation because I just had a tendency to work on Sunday mornings, you know, start my week off and I would get things off my plate and I'd send emails to my team. And in my mind, I was just delegating it.
Right.
I didn't have to think about it anymore. Not realizing that person on the other side that got that email on a Sunday morning,
they're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this.
I have to react to it. My boss actually sat me down one day and said to me, you can't do this. Because you're putting this urgency, no urgency to it, but you're giving them feeling there is. And if they feel they don't live up to your expectations and respond back immediately within a reasonable period of time, you think they're doing their job. And it never even dawned on me that I was.
Oh yeah. It was that was your routine.
That was my routine.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I've had to set that, you know, have that discussion with clients to say, I don't work 24/7. You know, now, if you send me an email at 10 o'clock at night, I might read it, but, you know, unless it says urgent or something like that, I'm not going to do anything. And of course, the easiest way to get around a lot of that was to tell them, here are my hours. Here's when I'm working. Obviously, if there is something that, needs to be on a weekend, an evening, a holiday, we can do that, but it'll cost you twice as much. And they almost always think, oh no, it can wait.
It's not that important.
Yeah. So, but
Absolutely.
well, oh my gosh, Christine. See, I knew this was going to happen.
Oh
This
my
has
God, I
been
can't
such
believe
a delightful conversation. I know, and so it just means that we need to continue it, because this is like an onion. I mean, we're just peeling off all these layers. And so I would definitely love to have you back on again, but, tell us more about Threads of Leadership and how people find you and connect with you, and some of the services that you provide.
I do a lot of, my main service is coaching individuals.
Okay.
It's not, I don't do coaching that it takes 6 months to coach. Not, I'm very focused on individuals that are just taking that turn into that leadership role. And they've taken on new challenges. Now they're leading people, and now they're responsible for others. That really, that's my purpose and passion there, is to help them get through that initial phase, the different types of coachings, levels. I'm putting together actually what I'm calling a think tank, but it's really a group of individuals that are in that moment of imposter syndrome and create this safe space.
Okay.
They can then start to talk to other individuals and share in a place where, that point of confidentiality, it stays here and you can kind of work through it.
Perfect.
Going through this yourself. I'm putting together a book club, and I said, because all of this, I needed to get my coaching off and solid. So I've with all of these amazing authors I know.
Sign me up for that. I'd love to be part of that.
I will keep you in mind. So I want to do a book club, and again, it's it's bringing the author to the table.
Great. I love it. I love it. Well, how do they connect with you? How do they find you?
You're more than welcome to go to the website, which is leadershipinvestment.com. And you can set up a 15-minute call with me, just have a conversation. If you'd like to, happy to do that. I'm on
obviously LinkedIn. We saw each other again on LinkedIn.
And I'm on Facebook under Threads of Leadership, as well as personally, Christine Daspro. I'm on both of them.
Perfect.
Great way of connecting. But I want it to be an open conversation. I want people to feel really comfortable to come, just have a conversation. I guess I'm just sitting here in my mind. I'm thinking about the Fraser show, and I'm listening.
I'm listening. Yes. And I mean, that really is it. I mean, and so many people, they just need to know that they're being listened to, and I love that. But yeah, so, contact Christine. Would definitely have you on again. But until then, what final words of wisdom do you have for everyone?
Oh, my final words of wisdom is be kind to yourself, be kind, and celebrate the amazing individuals that you are.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. And we're actually recording this on a Friday afternoon for me, not for you, but, and what a great way to start the weekend by thinking about that, and I think that is something that we all, no matter what level we are, no matter what we're doing in life, we need to be kinder to ourselves. So again, I've been having a fascinating discussion with Christine Daspro. I'm Deb Creer. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.